Oh, hello, YouTube. Today in the Naughty Librarian, we are going through the history of the Talamasca. The Talamasca TV show is premiering on October 26th, and I am very excited for it, but I want to do a quick TLDR version of the history of the Talamasca. Who is the Talamasca? What's going on with it? What is it all about? Wanted to make a little video just to explain things. So let's just dive right into the facts here. So the Talamasca is born, right? Picture it. London, 748 CE. The Talamasca Order is created to catalog the paranormal and the immortals, and then also understand them and help them to better survive in a world full of humans. And that's mainly because all of the founders of the Talamasca were all paranormal individuals themselves. So there was a ghost, a vampire ghost, and a Taltos. I'll explain the differences here. So let's start off with the ghost. This is go in order. So our ghost, Gremt Striker Knowles. Now I'm using the term ghost kind of as a catch-all right now because in the Anne Rice lore universe, there's ghosts and there's spirits. They're two different things. To explain the difference between the two, I have to kind of deep dive into Vampire Chronicles lore for a minute. To be honest, it's insane. The lore of Vampire Chronicles makes very little sense. So here's a quick TLDR on it so you can kind of understand the difference between a spirit and a ghost. So once upon a time, millions of years ago, there was this human and his name was Amel. And Amel gets abducted by lizard bird aliens. And they make Amel into a human alien hybrid. And then they send Amel back to Earth because they want to destroy it, allegedly. Long story short, that doesn't happen, obviously. Amel does not destroy the Earth. He also creates the city of Atlantis, and then he proceeds to get himself killed in the destruction of Atlantis, and Amel ends up becoming a spirit himself, where essentially it's a consciousness with a dash of lizard bird alien goo, and that's what makes it a spirit. So this lizard bird alien goo is called Luricastria, and that is the main ingredient between a ghost and a spirit. Ghosts are just humans, spirits have alien goo in them. And Amel is now a spirit, but he kind of loses his mind, but he's still a consciousness. And then, plus or minus a few thousand years here, he kind of merges with Queen Akasha, and that accidentally makes vampires. Apparently, merging a spirit and a human with alien goo makes a vampire. I don't think the lizard alien birds knew that would happen, but here we are. It accidentally made vampires. So yeah, that's the quick TLDR on the insanity of the lore of the vampires. It's a lot. But anyway, Gremt. Gremt has never lived. He's never been a human before. He is a spirit. We first meet Gremt in the book Pandora. Basically, Pandora sees this spirit really actively trying to make a corporeal body for itself. And Pandora was like, oh, that's a cool idea. Go do a good job. She just kind of encourages Gremt because if the spirit wants to have a body, it's gonna have to fight for it. It's gotta work, bitch. And Gremt ends up forming a fucking body. It's corporeal now. And ever since then, Gremt has kind of had a love for Pandora. Not necessarily romantic love, more just love, you saved me and I love you for that kind of a thing. So that's the spirit. Let's move into the vampire, who is named Tessamin. Now Tessamin, ancient ass vampire. Actually, Tessamin was one of the Gen 1 vampires made by Akasha back in the day. So Tessamin, very, very old. He was very, very old when the Talamasca began. So after Akasha fell originally, Tessamin just wandered the earth for hundreds of years doing stuff. There's not really a lot told about his time wandering besides he just kind of wandered. And eventually he kind of wandered into the Druids and he's like, ooh, I kind of really like druids. Like, they like shared a lot of like cultural and like religious beliefs. And the druids are like, oh, but you're like really powerful and stuff. Like, we're going to refer to you as like our advisor. You're like our spiritual advisor of all of the druids. And things went well for a while there. And then, you know, the whole pesky vampire thing got to be a real fucking issue with the druids. So they end up trying to kill him by burning him alive. I know, things escalated quickly here. They thought they had succeeded because they burned him and he was just like a shriveled up little beef jerky body left. So they like took the body and they just like shoved it in a tree. And then a lot of time goes by and Tessamin is just like husk in this tree, like very, very slowly, like trying to heal himself. And things get better for Tessamin when we get to like ancient Rome era, because that's when the druids accidentally meet Marius. And Marius is, he is like a Roman nobleman, he's a scholar, and then the druids literally kidnap him to go be their new spiritual advisor. They're like, oh, you're smart and you know stuff. You need to come be with us. We're not taking no for an answer. So they take Marius and they like shove him in the big tree because I guess that's where the advisor's supposed to live. However, Tessamin's body is in there that's not dead. And Tessamin, quite hungry after all this time, also trying desperately to heal, nom 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 noms on Marius, turns him into a vampire. And all of Marius's blood allowed Tessamin to get just enough strength to like escape the tree, escape the druids. After he escaped the druids, this kind of brings us to the vampire ghost. Her name is Hesketh. So Tessamin escapes the druids. He's scared, he's weak, he needs help, but like, you know, he doesn't trust anybody. And so he's just like hiding in the woods, trying to not get burnt by the sun again. And he meets this woman named Hesketh. And she kind of has some like disfigurements and stuff. And she had been cast out of her village because of that. So she's just like a healer lady who lives in the woods by herself. You know, aka a witch. And she's nice to Tessamin. You know, she has disfigurements herself. She can understand someone having a hard time with their body. So she was nice to him and she kind of took him in and she lets him live in her house when he was still like beef jerky vampire. And they kind of form a friendship and eventually Tessamin makes Hesketh into a vampire as well. But those pesky druids, they're back again. They end up capturing Hesketh at some point and they kill her with fire. Mind you, Hesketh was much younger than Tessamin. Fire works, okay? She dies. Her body is destroyed. And she becomes a spirit because she was a vampire. She was infected with the alien goo and she has a consciousness. So not a ghost, but a spirit. And as a spirit, she ends up meeting Grempt at some point, and Grempt teaches her how to build a body for herself. So she eventually builds a corporeal form for herself. And after she has her body back, she goes meets up with Tessamin. She's like, hey, Tessamin, guess what? I made a friend named Grempt and you guys should hang out with each other because we'd all get along. And Tessamin's like, okay, whatever you say. You were dead and now you're alive again. So they all team up. We have a group of 3, which brings us to our last founding member of the Talamasca, the Taltos, Ashlar. Ashlar was like king of the Taltos at some point, like millions of years ago. And at this point, he had been wandering the earth for thousands and thousands of years before he meets up with these 3. And Ashlar kind of thought they were cool. They were all like fellow immortals as him. So he's like, hey, you want to know some shit? Like, I know some shit, I'll tell you it. And they're like, yes, please tell us shit. We'd like to learn. So he tells them all about like the history that he knows of like the Taltos people, the history he has observed. So they like add his knowledge with the knowledge of all 3 of them because they've all been around for a very, very long time. They have a whole history here. And since Ashlar told them all these secrets about his people, he also swears them to secrecy about the Taltos as a species. He's like, hey, you can't let any humans find out about us because they cannot be trusted with this knowledge. Trust me, from experience, humans have a long track record of being real fucking shitty to Taltos, okay? They can't know. This is your job now. And since the Talamasca's primary objective at that point was to understand immortals and protect them, they're like, you got it, bud. We will keep this top-notch secret. go in peace, live your life, and then from then on, the Talamasca has grown and attached new members to it. Usually these members are humans, however, they are humans with certain supernatural gifts. There's a lot of psychics, there's maybe some telekinetics among there. All kinds of psychic abilities have been joining the Talamasca to help immortals and paranormals exist. So that was like the TLDR version of like the origin for the Talamasca. Let's talk about like a few famous Talamasca agents of note that I think you should probably know about. And again, these are the TLDR versions of them. Number one, Raglan James. He is going to be in the Talamasca TV show, so you should know a little bit about him. Raglan is first introduced into the Anne Rice universe in Tale of the Body Thief. Now, Raglan was a Talamasca agent. During his tenure with the Talamasca, he developed his own sorcerer powers. Maybe I'm not using the term correctly, but let's just go with sorcerer for now. And basically his power is that he has figured out how to swap bodies with people, full on Freaky Friday style. So one day, Raglan James swaps bodies with like this hot young dude he found. It was like a coma patient. It wasn't just some random guy on the street. And in that form, Raglan meets up with Lestat, and Lestat doesn't have a sense of danger. And Raglan's like, hey buddy, do you want to be human for a little bit? Let's swap bodies. And then like, we'll have a fun Freaky Friday experience. And then we'll swap back. And Lestat's like, you know what? This seems like a fun idea. So they do it. And then wouldn't you know, Raglan takes off with Lestat's vampire body and doesn't want to give it back. So Lestat, being the chaos bisexual he is, has fucked himself over because his body is gone. He has a fresh new body. He needs to hunt down Raglan to like force his switch back. Which brings us to our next member of note for the Talamasca, David Talbot. So David was like the director of the London office of the Talamasca, and also kind of friends with Lestat. Like Lestat really liked him. He's like an old man, but like they could hang out and talk and stuff. And after Lestat loses his body, there's only one person he can turn to for help, which is David. And since they have like, a friendship spanning decades at this point, David's like, okay, I'll help you. Even though David is physically very old. He's like in his 80s. He can't really keep up physically, but his mind is sharp and he's like, I'll point you in the right direction. Long story short here, David does eventually manage to get Lestat his body back. However, it was kind of like, that shuffle game when you have the 3 cups? It was one of those. So Lestat gets his body back, and then David also does a switcheroo with Raglan. So now David's in the young hot guy body, and Raglan gets stuck into David's body, who is dying. So Raglan, boom, in David's body, dies. So David now has a young hot man body that he can just like take around town because he swapped it. And then cut to sometime later, Lestat finds David in his hot young guy body, and Lestat's like, you need to be with me forever, pal. So he turns David into a vampire, kind of against his will. It's a real dick move, honestly. However, David does end up forgiving him because it's ultimately what he wanted to do. Just not at that moment, but he wanted to do it eventually. So he forgives him. And then like Lestat and David and Louis are all in like a vampire throuple together. And now David in young hot guy body, who's a vampire now, he kind of becomes like unofficial vampire historian, and he like collects vampire biographies from several of our main key vampires here, like Marius, Armand, Pandora, etc. All of those books are allegedly penned by David as he's taking these oral histories down. So that's enough with David. Let's talk about his proteges, because he has a couple of them. Number one, Jessie Reeves. Jessie is a young woman, and she's also the last living human descendant of this vampire named Maharet. And Maharet was like one of the very first vampires ever made, and also Queen Akasha's #1 enemy. But Jessie is a brilliant scholar, a member of the Talamasca. David loves her like a daughter. Long story short here, in the end of The Queen of the Damned, she has to be turned into a vampire to save her life. So yet another Talamasca agent turned vampire. Again, let's jump forward several books to the very end here, and Jessie is still alive, and she's kind of still very smart and studious, and she ends up being like a main vampire advisor to Lestat because, like, spoiler alert, guys, Lestat ends up being like the prince of all vampires on Earth. This chaos bisexual, am I right? Like, somehow he's the ruler of all the vampires. And Jesse's there to tell him he's being stupid or not. So she's very important. Another protege of David is Merrick Mayfair. Now, we haven't been introduced to Merrick in any TV show yet, but she is a Mayfair witch, and she's also a medium. And I've talked about her in other videos, but like, she's had a long sordid history with David. And long story short here, in the end, Merrick does also end up being a vampire. And she also kind of has a light polyamorous situation with Lestat and Louis. David kind of, because she's already been with David, but David's part of the throuple. I don't know. These vampire relationships are wild. That all being said, let's move on to our last Talamasca agent of note, Aaron Lightner. So Aaron is mainly just from the Mayfair Witches series, and he was a very important character in that. He has been written out of the TV show Mayfair Witches and replaced with Cyprian, who's kind of a combo of two characters from that novel series. And his whole charge in the Talamasca was to bear witness to, record the history, and protect the Mayfair witch family. And also kind of keep them in check. He's like a little bit of an advisor to them at points when they trust him, because the Mayfairs have a long history with the Talamasca. Which kind of brings us to our next point. Like, what's the whole point here? We have talked about the Talamasca main objective being to learn about and protect immortals and other paranormal people. And one of their biggest objectives since the very beginning was protecting witches from persecution. And the Talamasca is the sole reason the Mayfair witches exist to this day. So long time ago, there was a Talamascan agent named Peter von Abel, and he was sent for the Mayfair witch, Suzanne Mayfair, the matriarch, the beginning of the Mayfair witches. He doesn't get there in time to save Suzanne. She gets burned at the stake. However, Peter was there in time to save her daughter, Deborah, and he rescues her, takes her to the Talamasca. That being said, not everyone in the Talamasca agrees with the main objective here of protecting and recording knowledge of paranormal and immortal beings. Some people think that they should be actively stopping them and like stopping the reproduction of them and protecting humans. That's all well and good. That's a difference of opinion in things. However, there is a separate Splinter group in the Talamasca that's causing all kinds of fucking problems, because their whole objective here is that they want to capture Taltos. They do touch upon this a little bit in the Mayfair Witches TV show, but basically the whole idea here is that in the Talamasca, there was a guy and he saved a female Taltos. He's been keeping her in like a little house in the countryside for decades. And here's the thing, this was a good thing. He did rescue her from humans who were planning to use her in very bad ways, like human trafficking kind of ways. So this female Taltos is very happy that she's been rescued. She's happy to live in this house by herself, away from humans. Like, this was a good situation for everybody. And if that were where it ended, the situation would stay good. However, it doesn't end there, because the problem is our main guy, his name is Stuart Gordon, he had other plans in mind for this Taltos. So the thing with Taltos is that they remember their whole life from birth to now, and also past lives, because they kind of reincarnate themselves. So there's a lot to be learned from this Taltos, and Stuart's like, we should make more Taltos. So Stuart and a couple lackeys he grabs, they form this little splinter cell whose main goal is to make more Taltos. Basically, it's three nerds with a serious breeding kink actively trying to find a male Taltos to take to the female Taltos and make more baby Taltos. However, this plot is found out by Rowan Mayfair, and the Talamasca also finds out about them because they were breaking all kinds of Talamasca laws in order to do this. And in the end, Rowan Mayfair ends up killing Stuart Gordon with her mind powers, and the two lackeys have a way worse fate than Stuart, because the Talamasca gets to them. And here's the thing about the Talamasca. These are librarians. They know the most fucked up things to do to people because someone has written it down in a book before. So they take the two lackeys, right? They like throw them down a hole in the ground to like this oubliette, right? Basically, that's it. They're just going to throw them in a hole. If you die on the fall, good for you. The thing is, one of them dies in the fall, the other lackey doesn't, and they just close the door and leave him to die on his own. So, yikes. Moral of the story here, do not piss off librarians because they will do horrible things to you. All right, so that was just like a crash course on the Talamasca lore involved. Main idea here, Talamasca was created to protect paranormal and immortal people from humans, help them thrive. I feel like in the show, this goal will have been twisted quite a bit. And we might be getting into like splinter cells like I talked about, other conflicting ideologies, the works, okay? So lots of things that could be happening in this series, but I wanted everyone to know the exact history that I know. On that note, let me know in the comments down below. I don't know, do you have any questions about the Talamasca? Let me know in the comments and hopefully I will get back to you with an answer. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. If you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos or a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.